So welcome. Thanks for being here. It's been hot this week. Tim's like, and there's more heat to come. So we are actually going to, RX is always, we slow things down here, but we're really going to chill out tonight. We're going to chill out. It's been hot. We're going to slow things down and we're going to focus on the thing that we're always focusing on in our yoga practice, which is our breath. Okay. So we're going to explore different ways and shapes that we put our body in and stay curious about where maybe we notice where our breath feels like it expands, where we find space. And maybe feel out some of those spaces where it doesn't always feel as spacious. Because the thing about the breath is that, especially if you've ever been in a situation where somebody says, just is always a good way to start this. No, it's not. Take a deep breath. How many times does that ever actually work? Sometimes, right? But if you're in a state where you're feeling elevated or tight or tense, your ability to access your breath can be hindered. Because naturally the body's going to hold on and stay tight, ready, right, to prepare or ready to protect. So if I could just take a big breath, like great, that would be wonderful, but it's more complicated than that. It's more complicated than that. This system that we use here, we understand the breath, is way more complicated than we can ever imagine to all fit in an hour's class together. So we're going to plant some seeds this evening. Plant some seeds about how our breath moves, how it's not just about this diaphragm that sits at our rib cage, but how our body is shaped in these folds and domes, and how we find expansion and playing with those areas of the body. Okay? All right. So, as we settle in, bring one hand here onto your belly, and bring one hand here over your breastbone. Now, for some of you, your hand naturally lands at your chest a little bit lower. I want to invite you to have a thumb on one side of your breastbone and your pointer finger on the other side. So it's more of the palm of your hand that's over your breastbone. For some of you, you might find it comforting, and maybe not, right? It's just an option, to have your thumb and your pointer finger just at your collarbone as another landmark. So for some, having their hand a little bit higher, for some a little bit lower, and that's okay. But maybe you take a moment there to feel out where your hand naturally lands. Or when it does land, that your body says, stay right there. Yeah. And then you can blink your eyes closed, or maybe your gaze is soft on a point that isn't moving. Notice the warmth of your body underneath your hands. Notice how your body can fill out the space of your hands. Notice that one hand moves more than the other. Notice that I'm not telling you how to do it. Just notice it. Just observe. Do you notice that one hand moves before the other? Do your two hands move in synchrony with one another? Does it feel smooth? Does it feel a little tight? If you imagine the connection between your two palms, does it feel like there's a buoyancy there, almost like a bungee, where they can expand and then contract? Or does it feel a little bit more like there's a pull, or something a little bit not as pliable? Just notice the quality. Now keep your hands just as they are. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some vibration. Because of our setup and the precautions, we're not going to share the sound of Om externally, but option one is to imagine the sound of Om and what that feels like in your own body. But I also would be okay if you wanted to add the sound of Hum. So there's a little more vibration there with your Om. Take a breath all the way in. Breathing in, when you're ready, take your time. It doesn't all have to be at the same time. One more. Now again, notice the sensation underneath your hands. Notice the sensation between your two hands. And as you blink your eyes open, we're going to start here on the side of your chest that you want to start on. Okay. So my right hand is at my chest, so I'm going to start at the left side of mine. I'm just going to cross my body here. And then I'm going to fill up the space beside my breastbone and below my collarbone. And when we do that, what you're going to do is you're going to use the surface of your fingers, and not just the pads of your fingers, so that just feels like we're pushing in, but instead use the whole length of your finger. And have the quality here of pushing down and then in. Now if you would like, you could take your other hand on top and then add that quality of that same inward and downward shape, almost as if there's an anchor. You could keep your hand in one place just as it is, or if you would like to create some circles. Okay, maybe in the direction of upward and outward towards your armpit. And you can pause at any time and add that point of that anchor again. Yeah. Notice when your body says, okay, yeah, I'll land right there. And then start to move a little bit up to the side. So like you're moving in the direction of your armpit. Moving from your breastbone towards the area of your armpit. If you have a ball at home, a therapy ball or like a manufactured ball, I don't know how I feel about the tennis ball because of the texture of the tennis ball on my skin. If you had it over a shirt, it probably would be okay. But a manufactured ball works great. You can then roll it and give yourself pressure across your chest. And then just keep exploring those spaces as you move out. You'll notice that as you go closer to your armpit, the muscle, you feel the tissue maybe get a little bit thicker. If at any time you want to add like a quality of a stretch, if you gaze the other direction, you'll feel a little bit more of a pull. And that for some of you might be a nice invitation, and for some, leave it out. As you work into those spaces, you could stay closer underneath your collarbone, or you could start to work down along your rib cage as well. Notice when your body, when Ryan wants to do that again. Right? Like, okay, I'll stay with this, this works. adding the pressure that works for your body. For some, I'm one of the individuals that need a lot of pressure. My body responds with a little bit more input. But for some, it's not as much. So grade it for you, what works best for you. So another moment there. Before we move to the other side, we're going to just pause. We're going to let our hands come down into our lap wherever they're comfortable and just notice one side versus the other. Yeah. Does the shoulder feel different on that side? Does your neck feel different? It's more than just about the input that's happening at your chest. And then we'll go to the other side. So again, finding that space, we're not on the bone, we're just to the side of your sternum or your breastbone, below your collarbone. Almost matching those spaces there between your rib cage. Those areas between your rib cage here have muscles that connect here between your ribs. When we don't use our rib cage to expand, do those muscles get to lengthen and shorten if our rib cage isn't moving when we breathe? Not so much. They can get tight. Or if you've been spending a lot of time at a computer, right, and we shorten then the front of our body because we're out in front of us, there can be lots of reasons. Or if you just spend a lot of time in the car like I was the other day. And you can always add moments of pause, especially if you get into those areas where it feels thick or it feels tighter, or just also, it can just be a place where there's not greater sensation. The sensation is more of that where your nervous system and your body just, oh, let me just take a big breath right there. And if you want to add a stretch quality, you would take your chin the opposite direction. And you could always bring your chin back towards the middle, and then as you anchor your hand, then turn your head the opposite way. And you could stay underneath the collarbone, or you can explore the spaces a little bit lower. A few more moments there. And then come up here to the middle, let your hands come down to your lap again, and notice how that area of your body feels. There's strong connections if you find that you're clenching your jaw. That also is a beautiful thing to do for yourself because of the connective tissue that moves from your jaw down to your collarbone, down to your chest, to your platysma. Notice the warmth in your chest. And as we start to shift around here, we're going to come on down. And now we're going to find the side body here. So if you have a bolster, you're going to set it up so it's the horizontal way around. If you don't have a bolster and you have a blanket, you're going to take your blanket, you're going to roll it up. If your towel, Tim, if it doesn't feel like it's enough or it's thick enough, you could actually even lay, like you could fold your blanket up over your block. Put it over your rock like that too. But feel it out with what it's like to roll it. The towels don't roll up a lot. But what you're going to do is notice that spot where your shoulder blade is, okay? And the surface here is going to come along the side of your rib cage there. So when you come down, here with the bolster, I'm going to set the bolster up just at the base of my armpit. Now, when you come on down, for some of you, creating like a pillow with your arm, your elbow bent is going to feel nicer. For some of you, having your arm long, it also can invite in some length into the opposite side of your neck.
I realize I didn't say what side to start on, so we'll just work with whatever side you're on. We'll balance it out, I promise. And notice that your legs, you can move them around, right? Like find where they're comfortable. For some, having the legs a bit closer to the belly and stacked. For some, having more of like a staggered shape in your legs. There's no wrong way to do it. Just wherever you feel like your legs land, and your legs can be your legs. But notice if you want to roll off of your side and come more towards the front of your body or the back of your body, I really want you to feel the side here, the side of your rib cage. So that when you breathe in, now you have the surface that your side is matching, and the opposite side that's reaching up towards the ceiling has to expand upward. So notice with your inhale, almost like your rib cage or your spine creates this arc-like shape, and you're naturally in this because you're on an elevated surface on your side. But how can you use that to explore the spaces of your breath? Your top hand can be naturally here at your side, if you want to stack it on the side of your hip, wherever it wants to be. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Wherever you feel like your arm can be your arm. It's not having to work. More attention here into how the rib cage expands with each inhale. And notice that when you exhale, then there's an attention inward. Right? There's a contraction that happens in order to move the air out of our body. For just a few more moments. Noticing this lateral direction of your movement, of your breath. And we're going to very, very slowly come out of this. When you do, I want you to keep your neck and your head heavy. Instead, I want you to really think about how you can use your arms to bring you up. So start by pressing into your hand that's at the top, if it's on a bolster or if it's on the floor. And press down with your top hand, and then press down with the arm that you're lying on. And then use that to bring yourself up. And then we're going to switch sides. So for most of you, if you just want to turn on the other side, you can, so that I'm still facing you. I'm going to actually switch where my bolster is. But you can just simply go to the other side. Give your time there to set it up. And sometimes you'll start in one place and then you'll be like, let me move around here and find a different space. And allow yourself there to land. Support your head the way you need to support your head, your arm that you're lying on, or maybe you have another pillow underneath your head or another blanket underneath your head instead of your arm. What's nice about having the head downward a little bit is that you get a little nice stretch here on the side of your neck as well. And stay curious in the movement of your breath. For some of you, it might even be interesting to take a little bit movement backwards and forwards and finding the just right spot. This is also like a little bit of input here to your latissimus dorsi. So not only is it an interesting place to play with when we're talking about breath, but it also is a wonderful place to also give yourself a little relief for your shoulders. Your top arm be your top arm, and wherever it wants to land. It might be at your side, it might be resting on your bolster. Notice how your rib cage that's reaching up, so the opposite side is not on your bolster. When you breathe in, notice how it reaches up towards the ceiling slightly. And when you exhale, how your rib cage then feels like it can come together. Notice it taking your gaze down towards the floor helps give you any relief from your neck. Stay here for just another moment. Again, when we imagine before we transition, take a moment here to visualize. It's like to let your arms use their strength to help bring you up. So let your head just be in your head, let your neck be your neck. As you press down with your top hand and use your other arm to slide.
And then take a peek up here at me. So if you have a bolster, you're going to place the bolster here on your lap. And so your bolster is going to be right to the edge here of your hips. Okay? If you have a blanket, you're going to fold up your blanket. So undo some of the roll and create more of a fold. Janet, yours actually might work nice the way it is though. So it's a nice thick blanket. Yeah. And so what will happen, now depending on the thickness of your bolster, okay? So as you bring yourself into this space, because now, and if you ate a big dinner before class, maybe don't go as far down into it, maybe stay on the arms even, okay, to be friendly with yourself here. But maybe just come down into your forearms. So now the input's gonna be into our belly space, okay? So if you bring your forearms down, another really lovely thing is you can just let your head drop, but also if you want to hold your forehead and let your head rest in your hands. And if the bolster is too big or bulky, you could try the blanket instead. Yeah. Again, depending on your bolster. Yeah, shift things around in there. I have a very squishy bolster, so, but a blanket pull works really well for that. If you have blocks, you want to bring a block underneath your head. That's it. Lori, nice setup of the bolster and the blanket. Use your props if you want to support your head with another surface, absolutely. But notice here that when you breathe in, because your belly can't expand outward in the way that it normally does, because we've got this input coming in here, that now your rib cage and your back body has to create more space. Imagine that space between your shoulder blades. Imagine the space in the backside of your rib cage below your shoulder blades. It's almost as if it's lifting up in expansion, reaching up towards the ceiling. Really stay with your exhale, because in the exhale, you could even imagine that there's a little bit more compression in towards the area of your diaphragm, but also into your abdominal wall here. Because breath is very much about creating here the compression and the pressure within our cavities, right, of those bowls and the stones. So when we stay curious and add these different elements to it, we resource these areas of our body that say, I can give you a little space here. You need to take your chin here into some yeses and some nos. Always an invitation there to take what you need. We're going to stay for just another 2 breaths. It's kind of an intense one. We don't need to stay long. One more moment there. If you're holding your head here, let your hands come down and start to bring yourself up and out of it nice and slow. Yeah, take your time. Take your time. You want to have a seat on your feet, you can if that works, and your feet and your shins. It doesn't work for everybody's knees and shit, right? Have a seat there and pause. Maybe you swing your feet out to the side. You can have an opinion about how that felt. It's okay. And I'm going to tell you we're not done yet. You're like, oh, yay! But you guys take a break and watch me do it first. Okay. So, what we're going to do, so we've already created some space, but now we're going to add hip extension. So there our hips were short, our hips were flexed, and now we're going to come down onto the bolster. So what you're going to do is almost set up like you're going to be here in space. You want to nestle it around a little bit, but the area that this is underneath you, I still want you to feel where your pelvis can be on the ground, okay? So for some that might take some shimmying forward or backward in order to nestle into the spaces there from the base here of where your rib cage comes together in your center, above at the top of your abdomen. And down towards the space of your hip bones, yeah? A blanket also, yeah, you got it. And if the blocks are too intense, Tim, you can take them away at any time. Is it okay? Okay. I love it so far. You're game for anything. So, for a moment there, yeah, can you see me outside of the bolsters here? Peek around here, I'm hiding from you. Take a moment there to reach down into your forearms. Yeah. Notice how that lifts you up there for a moment. As you can almost now feel like your pelvis really is your anchor. And again, you can always adjust or modify where it's at in the body. You need to go up or down, but I really want you to feel like your pelvis is connected. Notice if your butt is squeezing, yeah, rock a little back and forth, remind your butt to turn it down a little bit. Okay, now, this next shape, even though it feels like we're gonna come out of this shape, also has its own intensity, because now imagine how you're breathing into our back body when you're folded over the bolster. So now you're gonna take your elbows wide and bring your forehead down onto the bolster, or down onto your hands. And you could rest on the cheek, or you could rest your forehead on front hand. Again, you can wiggle your pelvis here a little side to side. But now you have this arc here again in the back of your body. You might notice that there's greater intensity in your exhale, as far as the sensation here at your center. Stay here for just another moment. And then you're going to bring yourself back up. So press down into your palms, bring your elbows in as they wrap in, so your elbows are underneath your shoulders. And then watch out for wanting to like drop in. Push down through your arms. Really feel like all that space you were at the beginning there, the front of your chest, like your shoulder blades would go down away from your ears. Like you could pull back your palms even towards your hip bones. Yeah. There's a little bit of energy there. Okay. Option 1 is to stay just as you are. Option 2 is to bend your knees. Just notice how that changes if there's any intensity in your back. If it is in your low back, lengthen your legs back out again, okay? But to feel here the compression around the area of your kidneys, that's okay. That's okay. That's kind of the shape this little is after here. And then let your legs go, and again, we're gonna rest. No, there's still a different intensity there. Wiggle your hips a little side to side. Just when you breathe in, how the back of your body here expands. Sinking in as you exhale. And we're going to play with that shape just one more time. So as you bring yourself up and bring your elbows in, again, you can stay just as you are in a supported Sphinx. Option 2 is to add the bend into your knees. And you'll feel your hamstrings do the work as they bend your knees. That's your knees. You may feel a little bit of glute action there. If you want to add on, it's just an option. Okay, stay as you are. Or you can also start to extend through your elbows. But shoulders stay away from your ears. So you'll feel more downward energy of your pubic bone. Big toes when you touch them. Now, for one more breath, maybe you can pull your palms energetically towards your hip bones. That'll lighten up around your shoulders. And then exhale, let it all go very slowly, bringing yourself down. Wiggle your pelvis a little side to side. Take one more breath there. And then you're going to find your way out of this shape. Okay, so you can bring your hand underneath your shoulders, push yourself up to the tabletop. Come on out of that shape. And for a moment there, you're going to take yourself into a pause. Yeah, it could be a child's pose, absolutely. You could be sitting on your feet. And let yourself just, again, notice the warmth around your belly. Notice the warmth there. Even if you put your hand there, you might notice that. So as you're there, I'm just going to set my bolster off to the side, and we're going to come back down to our backs, but watch me first. We can adventure into a little bit of mobility work in our spine. Okay? So as you come down, can everybody see me where they're at in the room? Okay. And I'll talk through it as well. So we're going to start here with our feet bent. Know where your blanket or your bolster is, because we're going to add that to the shape here towards the end. But notice here in the natural curvature of the spine, right? There's a little bit of space there. And what we're going to do a little breath work with mobility work with your spine after we've created some space here. And so what I want you to think about is just about how the pelvis is going to move. And how the pelvis moves, it influences how the rest of your spine responds to it because of the curves of your spine. So what we're going to do is we're going to play with just one direction at a time, and then we'll put it all together. So we take an inhale. We're going to take the bowl of our pelvis, so think of your pubic bone here towards your belly button, and I'm going to tip my pubic bone down towards my feet. And do you see how now I've got an increased curve here in my lumbar spine? So it's like tipping your tailbone up in a cow pose. Then when I exhale, and I'm just going to let it go. I'm not going to go into the opposite shape just yet. And we're just going to play with the anterior pelvic tilt, is what it's called. And notice how that influences your upper spine here. You might even notice that when your pelvis moves that direction, your chin comes down towards your chest, but only because it's naturally going in that shape. And then we'll play with the opposite direction. So a posterior pelvic tilt, which means that I'm going to take my pubic bone up towards my belly button and take my tailbone between, like in the direction between my legs, like you're in a cat pose. But we're just focusing, you see how I closed that space there now? So it's like flattening my low back. And then we'll let that go. And so we'll put all of those pieces together then, and then moving here in the pelvis and how it tips and moves and how it influences the rest of our spine. Okay? So I'll talk you through it. So come on down.
Have your knees bent. Your feet can be as wide as your feet want to be. Give yourself space. But feel like your feet are can anchor you. And for a moment there, just pause and notice how you feel the contact of your feet, of the back of your pelvis, your sacrum, the back of your shoulders, and the back of your skull. Just take a mental body scan there of how those curves and all those points work together. And then as you take your next inhale, we're going to take ourselves into an anterior pelvic tilt, which means you're going to take your pubic bone down towards your feet as you rock onto your pelvis here. So it's like you're taking your tailbone and you're tipping it so that it's reaching down towards the floor. And notice how that creates this increased curve in your lumbar spine. And then exhale, just let it go. You're just gonna naturally just let it rebound into its natural shape. On your next inhale, do it again. Stay curious. If you have your hands at your hip bones, that can be a really great cue, as you can notice here, how the rest of the spine sometimes wants to do the work for the initiation here, what we really want the pelvis. And then exhale, just naturally just let it go. Notice the natural curvature there. Give yourself a pause. And then inhale. You're taking the bowl of your pelvis and you're tipping it down. You might notice how that articulates through your rib cage. You might notice that your chin comes towards your chest. Some spines won't have that same kind of movement. Just notice it. Notice how your spine moves and how your spine responds. And just let yourself exhale into its natural curve. Now we're going to take it just the other way. So this time, then we're going to take it on our exhale. So take a breath in. And then when you exhale, you're going to take your tailbone like it's going here between your legs. You'll feel this flattening in your low back as your pubic bone then reaches up towards your belly button in that direction. And then when you inhale, let it naturally just return to normal. On your next exhale, you're taking the bowl of your pelvis and you're tipping it upwards. So thinking cat shape, like when you think cat-cow. So you flatten your low back. You might notice how your chin lifts a little bit. Maybe. Don't get too worked up about it if it doesn't. And then on your breath, just let it come back to neutral. One more time as you exhale, you take the bowl of your pelvis and you're tipping it upwards, so your pubic bone is lifting up. But your butt stays on the ground. It's just tipping your pelvis. And then as you inhale, let it return to neutral. Give yourself a moment there. And now we're gonna seam it all together, but it's gonna be more like a 4-part breath, because we're still gonna let the natural rebound occur, okay? So on your next inhale, you're taking your pubic bone and you're taking it down towards your feet so that the curve in your low back is a little bit more accentuated. Then exhale, return to neutral. Inhale, stay. Exhale, take your pelvis in the opposite direction. So now you're posteriorly tipping your pelvis. And then let it all come back down to a neutral shape. Notice the natural curve of your spine. When you take your next breath in, your pubic bone is drawing down, so you're taking the bowl of your pelvis and tipping it down towards your feet. Exhale, come into a neutral spine. Inhale, stay. Exhale, take the bowl of your pelvis up towards your belly. You can feel some pressure in your feet. And then on your next breath, let it return to neutral. On your next inhale, move at your pace. So if your pace is different than my cueing, that's okay. But I do want you to still follow the inhale and the shapes. Exhale, return to neutral. So you just let it rebound. Stay for the inhale and exhale. Tip your pelvis so that you flatten your low back, and notice how that might articulate into a slight little chin lift. And then return to neutral. Do one more time. On your next inhale, tip your pelvis, your chin might draw towards your chest a little. Exhale, rebound to neutral. Stay for your inhale, and then exhale. Pose to your pelvic tilt or cat shape in the spine, but it's just your pelvis doing the work. The rest of your spine is responding in its buoyancy. Remember that bungee core that I referred to earlier. And then let it go. Here, come back into a neutral shape. Now, stay on your back as you are. You could keep your feet where they are if you would like, but you could also take your feet as wide as your mat. And then very slowly and gently, start to just take your knees in a small way, just a little side to side. Have your hands at your belly, and your elbows can be out long. And notice that when you knock your knees a little side to side, you're nice and slow, so you're rolling over the back of your pelvis now. How your hands shift across your belly. Yeah, you have to move your bolster block out of the way. Sorry. Just push it out of the way. Because eventually you're going to let your knees take on bigger and bigger actions here. So now it's going to feel a little bit more twisty. And let your hands just naturally slide across your belly. The next time your knees go to the left, let them stay there. So your knees are to the left, they're in a staggered shape. And notice how now your right hand is probably closer to your right side of your rib cage. You could just let your hands rest on your belly, but if you would like to, you could give yourself a little bit of input, a little of that pressure that we were doing at our chest pain in class. But now down, just on the inside here, just arming below the right side of your rib cage. It could stay there and do like a little circular action, or if you would like, you could draw almost like this diagonal line from your ribs on the right towards your belly button in that diagonal line. You could stay, or you could even take your hands a little bit along the side of your abdomen there as you stroke towards your belly. You can pause at your time and find stillness if that feels more inviting. And then take your time and bring your knees back to the middle. And then let them tick-tock again here in the middle. So you're staying, keep it small, back more into a center space, and then we'll make it bigger again, and then we'll let them just go to the right. So we're just going to reset your back in the middle, do that rocking action. Rolling here across your sacrum. Eventually, your knees are going to keep going more to the side, and eventually they'll land here to the right. But take your time in getting there, don't rush. And just let your hands glide over your belly there with the intention of that keyword of gliding. Eventually, as your knees draw to the right, you might notice how your left hand is at your left side of your ribcage there. You can take your right hand and your left hand for that matter, or it could just be one hand. You could just let it rest there and allow your body to receive that neutral warmth of your hands, which can be such a comforting touch gesture. Or if you want to add some gentle circles to your belly, if you want to add a stroke from your rib cage towards your belly button area, sticking at that diagonal line, just gentle stroking, working even down along the edges of your rib cage towards your side. Staying there for just another moment. Find some stillness with your hands. Just let your arms and your hands be your arms and your hands, just the natural weight of them. And then bring yourself very slowly back and towards the middle. Now, You have the option to stay on your back, and I'm going to talk you through the next shape. But if you want to see what I'm doing, you can roll to your side or also roll all the way up. But you're going to find here your bolster or your blanket. And you're going to bring it, mine is refusing to slide on my sticky mat. That happens. And you're going to find it where it's more underneath your thigh bones. So that when you bring your feet together as the invitation, if this does not work in your knees and your hips, then you can keep your feet flat on the floor with your knees up. If you've got blocks, you can keep blocks underneath your thighs. But now your legs here can stay supported. If you have a blanket and using a blanket roll and you want a little bit more height, if you open up the blanket a little bit more, Janet, even the other direction, and then roll it, and it's a little bit longer, you can fold up the edges. And then it's almost like little mini blocks. There you go. I'm gonna fold. There you go. Yep. See if that works. Such a really great big blanket. You might not even need another even roll. That's so funny. It is. I love it. So as you settle in there, let your hands return to the space here on your hip bones, where your hands almost create this diamond shape with your pointer fingers and your thumbs touching one another, and they're just resting there below your back line. Imagine around the area where your bladder is. Now, when we think about the breath, oftentimes, again, we think about the belly, we think about the diaphragm. Some will teach that there are actually 3 diaphragms, some will teach that there's 5, some will teach that there's 7. You know what? It's all good information. It's all valuable information. But for this moment, we're going to imagine how the diaphragm are in our ribcage and how the area of our pelvic floor move together. Okay? So if you imagine that your brain could imagine where your left sitting bone is. Now let your brain map where your right sitting bone is and just create a line between those 2 spaces. And you might just stay simply with that. That is a beautiful amount of work right there. Just thinking that horizontal line side to side. I'm going to give you the option here to add to what that visual or the experience is like, but know again to keep it simple and stop wherever you need to. Okay? Now imagine where your pubic bone is there, the bottom or the front here, the bottom side of your pelvis. And now draw a line in your mind to your tailbone. So now you've created a line perpendicular to the other one that you already established. Or just being curious about, right? Now for a moment, if that feels okay, you could now imagine moving from that line, starting from the point of your pubic bone to your right sitting bone, to your tailbone, to your left sitting bone, and then back to your pubic bone. And that shape there would be a diamond. And in that shape of your diamond exists your pelvic floor. This bowl, right, that is at the base of your spine. That responds and moves to the movement of your breath just like your diaphragm does. So that when you take an inhale, imagine those points of your diamond, imagine that there could be space there, almost like a downward or an outward direction. There's space, there's expansion. When you exhale, those 4 points, and that, or the center of those 4 points even, feel like they come together,
like an inward or an upward intention in your exhale. Inward, there's space, there's a downward intention there. And then when you exhale, as your rib cage draws towards the center, as your diaphragm and your ribs draw up to help press the air up out of your lungs, that your pelvic floor also draws upward and inward. So they move together in the inhale, dissension, descending downward. And then exhale, drawing back upward, again like the rebound. I love that word with this work. Noticing here the subtlety of the action and the intention of how you move your breath throughout your body. Now, if your hands would like to stay where they are, they can. Or you can migrate your left hand up back to your breastbone where we started class. So one hand would be at your belly and one hand would be at your heart. And again, notice the beautiful dance of how your body transforms and your body takes this shape, even though it's very subtle, with each inhale and each exhale. Inhaling, expansion, or you might even think about descending. And with your exhale, an ascending, or inward and upward intention. And you can stay with the shape of your legs for as long as you would like. Or if any time you would like to lengthen them out, your hips out of that external rotation, which just gave your pelvis a little bit more space. You can do that. So you have the option to stay as you are, or shape shift into a space that you will rest for Shavasana. And if resting for you is the invitation to come upright and sit in more of a space for your meditation, you most certainly can. If you're curious and you like to continue to focus on how your breath is moving here, you can, or let it go. Just let your body naturally do what it's going to do. Add layers where you need to. Add props, take props away. And then resettle back in. Notice the warmth around the area of your belly. Notice the weight of your legs. Points of your body that are in contact with the surface underneath you. Feeling held, supported in its steadiness. And as you drift off into rest, I'll send you with these words from Hafiz. In need of the breath. My heart is an unset jewel. Upon the tender night, yearning for its dear old friend the moon. When the nameless one debuts again, 10,000 facets of my being unfurl wings and reveal such a radiance inside, I enter a realm divine. I too begin to so sweetly cast light, like a lamp through the streets of this world. My heart is an unset jewel upon existence, waiting for the friend's touch. Tonight, my heart is an unset ruby, offered bowed and weeping to the sky. I am dying in these cold hours for the resplendent glance of God. I am dying because of a divine remembrance of who I really am. Move in and out at your pace, your rhythm. You might even notice the temperature, the sensation of the air as it leaves your nose, comes back in through your nose. Allowing the breath to move freely through you into those spaces of your body that you've created openness and expansion here this evening. Allowing the breath to be this beautiful gift. Moves our precious life force and energy through us. With breath, there's vitality. With vitality, we go out to the world and do the things that we are called to do. Serve in the way we are called to serve. To be called into action. In ways that honor you, that honor also all beings everywhere. To deepen your exhale, feel your fingers and your toes a little bit. You might take those little wiggles and start to make them into bigger wiggles. You might even reach your arms over your head as you bend your leg and take a big stretch. As you pass onto your side before you come into an upright seat, you might even pause on your side. Staying on your side as long as you need. You want to sit on a blanket or a block to support your spine. Take your time to set yourself up. Now that we're upright, bring the hand back into your chest and the hand into your belly. And notice, does this container feel like the same container that we walked into the room with? Does the breath move through you in the same way? Or was there a shift? Even just this moment, this beautiful gesture, your pause, come back to yourself, present in this moment. Knowing that with this breath, it's this reminder you are alive. Take your hands and now form them into a prayer. Your palms together and your thumbs at your breastbone. We're going to allow our own to remain silent for ourselves here, within ourselves. Take a breath in. Invite in the quality of the sound of home into your spirit, into your body. Imagine that it almost feels like there's a line downward with it. Thank you for being here. Thanks for showing up. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. We will see you soon. Namaste.